Good time of day, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Viktor Vee. Boy oh boy, surprises do not end here today. A huge chunk of you saw my beginner's guide to music production and asked me to do a similar thing but for music theory instead. Well, I do have a music theory section on my website, viktorvee.com by the way, but you know what? That's not a bad idea. So this video will be a crash course in all things music theory that a beginner might need, but I will stress one thing. That you should still check the more in-depth videos that I will make about these topics, because, let's be honest, sooner or later you're gonna have to confront your music theory demons. And also because a beginner's guide requires a level of rule bending and omission to be, suitable for beginners. Every single time I start talking about a topic today, you will see an image pop up. These are article selectors and can be traced back to my website, so if you don't want to wait until I make a video on that specific topic, you can always pull yourself by your bootstraps and read the article that's already written. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume you know absolutely nothing and never even been aware of the existence of music in your entire life, let alone how to make it. Well then, what you need to know is that music can be very much compared to the way our language works. There's grammar, there are individual words that can be formed into phrases or sentences or paragraph and so on. The way you use everything matters if you want the person on the other side of the headphones to understand what you're trying to say. That being said, our musical alphabet is much smaller than our regular one, and the smallest unit out there is a note. Generally speaking, there's 12 notes we can play around with. We use letters to name them, and the best way to showcase it is with a piano keyboard. The white notes are labeled from A to G, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's 7. Now the other 5 notes are the black ones above the white notes we just mentioned. Black notes are named in relation to the white note they're adjacent to, and since all of them are third wheeling, this means that any black note can have 2 names. Let's take this one for example. We said that this is the note A, so this is the A sharp. Sharp meaning it's higher than A. It can also be named B flat at the same time. Flat meaning it's below B. Following the same logic, these are the notes C and D. So what is this note called? Correct? C sharp or D flat. Congratulations, you have now discovered all notes at our disposal. But why does a piano have a lot more notes than that? Well, don't worry about the size of a keyboard, it's all about how you use it. Every time you see anything past 12 notes, it's just the same 12 notes that keep on repeating over and over. When you reach that A at the end of our example, the next note is going to be a B all over again. It's the same B that you see here, but here's a catch. This one is double the frequency of this one. Frequency is how fast the sound wave vibrates. Crazy, right? It sounds higher, but it's the same note. And every iteration of the same note will double in frequency compared to the previous one. The more to the right you go, the higher in frequency every note will be. And by the way, this distance, going from one note to the one that's double its frequency, or 12 notes, however you want to remember it as, it's called an octave. This and this is an octave, so is this F, and so on. While we still have our keyboard here, something to keep handy is the concept of intervals. Intervals are simply distances between individual notes. The smallest one is a half step or a semitone, which is the note right next or before the current one, and the other distance is a whole step or a whole tone, which is 2 semitones put together. Essentially, it's skipping a note. Intervals will come in handy later in this video. That being said, we don't always use all 12 notes to make music. Most often than not, we limit ourselves to a distinct selection. Those are called scales. A scale is nothing more than a collection of notes that have a specific sound when they're played together. Usually there's 7 notes in a scale, or 8 if you want to count the octave. Listen to this. This sounds pretty happy and joyful, while this is a little bit more serious. And this is how you just discovered the main 2 types of scales. Major, meaning happy, and minor, meaning sad. Or rather than sad, I would say serious. Most music nowadays is written with minor scales. I'm not going to go into as to why, it's a whole different video. The gist of it is that it's easier to bend the minor scale to your will and make you do whatever you want it to do musically. Aside from doing your dishes, you're on your own there. Every scale is named like this. It's the note it starts on plus its quality. I'm going to showcase this using the C major scale. It's by far the easiest one to understand as it has only white keys in it. So it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Pretty happy, isn't it? But what exactly makes a major scale, major? It's the distances between the notes within it. It's the pattern of them, the intervals we were just talking about. If you look at the pattern starting on C, it's whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. This whole half, whole half pattern is the same pattern used to make every single major scale out there. So let's start on A, for example. Whole half, whole half. And you got yourself the A major scale. Easy. But we are not limited to major scales only. There's also minor ones. And the difference between major and minor scales is the pattern used to construct them. And this different pattern gives these, moody vibes. So if a major scale is whole half, whole half, a minor scale is made by sequencing whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. This way we are getting to the natural minor scale. And the easiest way to showcase this is with the A natural minor scale. It's made of only white notes, so it's pretty easy to understand. So it's whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. You got yourself an A natural minor scale there. But wait. Wasn't there another scale that was made of only white notes? You are correct. C major. It's composed of only white notes as well. My body just froze for a second. C major scale is composed of only white notes as well, and that's what we call a relative minor. If you outline any major scale, the sixth note is going to be the tonic of its relative minor, meaning it starts on that note. So in a C major scale, it's A, meaning that the C major and A natural minor will have the exact same notes. They're just starting in different places. If we consider a G major scale, for example, its sixth degree is the note E. So the E natural minor scale will have the same notes as the G major scale. But I'm jumping around too much. Let's keep our eyes on the C major scale. Whole half, whole half. Let's now look at the C natural minor scale in comparison. Whole half, whole. Can you spot the difference? The difference between a major and a minor scale, assuming we are starting on the same note, lies in a difference in the third, sixth, and seventh notes on the scale, which are 1/2 step lower in the minor scale compared to the major. So another way to make up natural minor scales is getting really good at major scales and lowering their third, sixth, and seventh notes by a 1/2 step. Something I have to mention, but will not go too much into, is that there's more than one minor scale. We don't use the natural minor a lot when we write our music, for reasons I will not bore you with right now. I will share those reasons in a more in-depth video dedicated to scales that I'm currently writing, so keep subscribed for that. But for learning purposes, I do advise you to still become comfortable with the natural minor scale we talked about, because even if we don't use it often in writing, it's still a useful cinder block in music theory, and we will see more of it later down the line. Next up, I want to talk about chords. Now, I'm sure you've heard that term before, so let's define it. A chord is multiple notes being played together simultaneously. Now, there's no limit to how many notes can be in a chord, as long as they're, more than one. But today I'm going to focus on triad chords. These are chords composed of 3 notes. These are the most common and the most useful ones. And much like scales, chords can have qualities too. For simplicity's sake, we're going to narrow it down to major and minor chords for the purposes of this video. Again, look forward for the in-depth one if you want to learn more, or just look up the other ones on the website. I'm not hiding them from you, but they're slightly more advanced in their use, and that would defeat the purpose of a beginner's guide. So a triad is composed of 3 notes. Here's a way I want you to think about chords right now. Take any scale. I will keep using a C major for convenience. The first, third, and fifth notes, when played together, will make up the C major chord. And this is a pattern you will see a lot. First note in a scale, third note in a scale, and fifth note in a scale. Let's do it with the C minor scale then. First, third, fifth. C minor chord. But here's the cool thing. Here's a shortcut. If you put the 2 chords side by side, you will see that the difference between major and minor chords is a single note. If you know what the major is, you can easily find out the minor one by lowering the third by a 1/2 step. If you know the minor one, you can easily find out the major one by pushing the third a half step up. This, by the way, will work for any major scale, any minor scale. This is just how you find out major and minor chords, or triads at least. Let's approach the final boss then. In front of you, there's a C major scale once again. Every single note in it can be a start to a new chord. Let's then see what we can come up with by making triads here. Let's keep our available notes to only this scale. So by following the 1-3-5 rule, we get C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F. We're essentially taking a note, then skipping one, and then skipping another one to form the triad. Now, you may notice something. While we are using a major scale, not all of these chords are major. So here's another pattern you will find yourself using an awful lot. Within a major scale, the triad chords built on degrees of the scale will always progress in this order. The first one is always major, the one built on a second is always minor, the third one is always minor, fourth and fifth are always major, the sixth one is always minor, and the seventh one is what we call a diminished chord. But that's a mouthful, let's simplify it. We simplify that by indicating major chords with a capital Roman numeral and minor chords with a lowercase Roman numeral. The chord built on a 7th degree is a diminished chord. I spared you the details on that one. I'm also going to spare you the details about the patterns of minor scales. I've briefly mentioned that there's more than one minor scale, so to avoid confusion later down the line, I'm going to just completely glance over minor scales in this beginner's guide. So just look forward to the in-depth video for me just rambling about it. Knowing the Roman numeral patterns is important for your mental well-being. They save a lot of time, and they are also how we communicate chord progressions. Progressions are nothing more than just sequences of chords. Let's make an example of the most ubiquitous chord progression out there. 1, 6, 4, 5. We're using the C major scale once again as an example. And just like that, we can understand and, most importantly, communicate what we are playing at a single glance, at a drop of a dime, without wasting too much time. Now, does it matter what chord should you play after what? Well, yes. Absolutely. But I don't want you to focus on that too much right now. The only things I will say for the time being is that all chord progressions in one way or another tend to pull towards the tonic chord. It's the 1 chord. It feels like home. It feels stable. And the hardest push to it is from the chord 5 to 1. Just like we've seen in the 1, 6, 4, 5 example, that 5 tends to want to, like loop around and resolve back to 1. That resolution is something you will encounter a lot in music. So I encourage you to look at the songs you like and find out what chord progressions they are using. It's just a matter of practice after all. Given enough of it under your belt, you will start to feel whether a 3 chord or a 4th chord might be more suited to what you are trying to say, musically speaking. I'm going to stop here, because if I introduce anything more, I'm scared of just melting your brain. There is this useful diagram called the circle of fifths, as well as others like solar harmony and gravity ladders, that try to explain the relationships between chords and what sounds best after what. But I think a lot of people will agree that's way too early for that. I want you to have fun with what you know now, and all that other jazz can come and be discussed later. Usually I also consider timing to be a part of music theory essentials, but this video is already a lot, and I don't think many of you will be too mad if I stop here. Plus, I've already briefly talked about it in a beginner's guide to music production. It will get its own video, don't worry about it. But in the meantime, you're good with what you learned here today. Get a feel for it, grow comfortable thinking about it, and I will see you in the next video. Speaking of comfortable, I think I'm now comfortable trying to publish 2 videos a week instead of 1, so let's see how that fares out. As usual, I'm your host Viktor Vee. If you'd like to support me, my Patreon is in the description and on the screen as well. And I will see you in the next video. Like, subscribe, and all that good jazz. Bye!